All right, so we're going to talk about sanding high solids vinyl sealer, okay, or sanding vinyl sealer. We've got our parts. This is our Pagoda faux bamboo china cabinet hood. We got our top, and then we have our lower assembly here. We're going to sand all these components today to get them ready for paint, right? We use our high solids vinyl sealer, and then we apply nitrocellulose lacquer on top of it, and it makes for a beautiful glossy shine that people just know and love from the Resplendent Crow. So you can see we have all of these beautiful faux bamboo details, right? But bring this bad boy in nice and close. We'll kind of get some close-ups on some of the things that we're seeing here. I can see little indentations in my faux bamboo. And while some of those are okay, right? It's part of the charm of the piece. Some of them just don't look correct. It looks like it was a poured piece of composite as opposed to a natural piece of vintage furniture. So we'll have to go ahead and correct those things. Also, we'll pan up here. Put my finger up here. You can see this dark line across here, and that's one of the great things about primer, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a filler all along here to help shade in some of that darkness, right? Because there's going to be gaps. You're going to have imperfections in your work. And the thing about painted furniture versus stained furniture is when you have a piece of dark stained furniture, you can have all kinds of gaps and they just blend right in with the grain, right? When you're talking about a painted piece of furniture, every single detail shows up. So it's very important that you fill before you prime and then you fill after you prime before you do any painting. Prep is everything. All right, so this is a product that I use for all of my furniture, okay? Before we spray any nitrocellulose lacquer, we always put Mohawk vinyl sealer down first, okay? This particular vinyl sealer is a heavy solids vinyl sealer, meaning it's got more solids in it, right? So it's gonna lay down a little bit thicker. It gives us a slightly thicker surface to sand on, right? So when you lay paint or you lay primer, most people don't know this, but it actually lays like this. Right? A lot of people think that when you lay that coat of paint, it's nice and flat. It's not. So when you go over it with your sandy blocks and your DA sanders and all that, you're actually sanding that surface nice and flat. And having a thicker coat of primer actually allows the surface underneath of it, if there are any imperfections, it will help to kind of absorb some of those and even those imperfections out to give you, again, a very smooth, flat surface that's fantastic for high gloss nitrocellulose lacquer. We first sanded these cabinets and then we've applied our primer. Once we put that primer on, we can really see the imperfections, right? The sanding and finish work that was missed, right, in the initial sanding process. So now we'll look this thing over and I'll kind of take you through the steps that I use to get this thing ready and the next layer of finish work completed so that we can then apply the beautiful lacquer paints that we're known for. All right, so we're gonna start. Tools of the trade here, stuff that we're gonna need some kind of a sander, right? You want a you want a sander that has vacuum because you want to be able to expel all that dust as opposed to letting that dust set on the surface of your primer where it's gonna create swirl marks, right? That dust kind of pools up, it creates little bubbles, and then it spins those bubbles along your surface, creating what we call swirl marks, right? So what we have here is we have a Festool 6-inch sander, and this sander has vacuum attached to it, right? Which is hooked up to our actual vacuum unit over here, and we'll go ahead and start sanding this. First thing we're going to use is we're going to start off with a 320 grit sandpaper. And we use 320 because what we're really trying to do is we're trying to just basically knock off the shine and knock off any little imperfections. Here's the truth about spraying high gloss lacquer paint. If you can create a vinyl sealer surface that is as smooth as your painted surface, you don't need to sand anything, right? And a lot of people don't talk about this, but if it's dead smooth, and you can't feel anything when you're running your hands across it, you don't even need to sand it. You can just spray right over the top of it because that lacquer is going to meld with the vinyl sealer and give you a beautiful, flat, consistent, glossy surface. Now we're in the sanded areas that have lots of detail, right? This faux bamboo is rounded, it's got goofy shapes to it, it's got crevices, it's got all kinds of stuff going on. We got narrow patches here, and of course we have the easy flat stuff, but we got radiuses along here. I mean, it's just, there's all kinds of details that we need to sand out. So some of the things we're gonna use, We're gonna use ourselves a rectangular Festool sander, which we'll hook up to our vacuum. We've got Durablock sanding blocks here, which I use for everything, which uses good old PSA sandpaper. Fantastic product. And then something you might not be familiar with are these Surf Prep sanding pads, right? These are squishy little pads that can be bent into all kinds of shapes. They have all different kinds of grits. The one we're using for our primer, in this case, is the fine grade. So you get on Surf Prep and look at their stuff. It's pretty cool. The thing you need to understand about sanding primer is knock off the shine, right? Like, put it up there, knock off the shine. It's the most important thing you need to remember when sanding primer. It's not always about, getting the flattest, smoothest finish, which is obviously what you want, but sometimes it's just as simple as knock off the shine. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by getting into all my corners with my sander here. I'm gonna go ahead and then work into my 6-inch Festool, and I'll work along here, get all this stuff kind of cleaned up, looking good. Then I'm gonna get in using my Surf Prep pads, and I'm gonna work all of these bamboo surfaces, right? My bamboo surfaces here. I'll work all of my rounded, larger faux bamboo legs here. I'll work this reed here. We'll knock off all this shine, knock off any high spots we have, and we'll have a nice smooth surface that's ready for paint. So one of the cool things about Festool sanders is they all have the same plug, and they all have the same receptacle for the vacuum. So you can grab your cord, you can attach it, grab your vacuum, attach it all. You're ready to rock and roll, whether you're using rectangle, you're using the 6-inch, the 5-inch round. I mean, Festool just has so many different sanders. So anyway, we're gonna start here, and again, using the 320 sandpaper is what I start with all my sanding. Grab the 6-inch sander. You get the same deal, we just plug this bad boy in. Plug in our power. And we're going again. Now I'll take our Surf Prep pad, nice and squishy pad, and I'm gonna run it along my faux bamboo here, and to get into all these little corners. And again, all I'm trying to do is just knock off the shine. I'll run my hand along it. I don't want to feel any high spots of any kind. I just want it to be consistent and smooth. Now finally sand along this flat surface. I'll literally just take my block, and I'm gonna try and sand this thing nice and flat. We'll follow up with our Surf Prep pad just to kind of blend everything in. One of the other little tips we like to use when we're sanding our primers is we'll take ourselves an LED light, right? We take this LED light and we turn that on, and it allows us to really see any imperfections in our surface as we're sanding them, right? So we'll sand these things, we'll get them close, and then when it comes time to start putting in our fillers, we're gonna use our LED light, and we're really gonna hone on anything that needs to be filled. And you can already see that you can look at the surface of our hood here, and the surface itself looks really good, but the minute you put that light on it, you can really start to kind of hone in on imperfections maybe in the bamboo or in the surface. You can actually see sanding marks from the prep work that was done before it was ever primed. Now these LED lights can be purchased all over the internet. I'll put a couple links to a few of them. These work really well. They're very high intensity, and like I said, they're fantastic for really helping you see imperfections very quickly. Another thing I've seen people use are these little headlamps. This one's a black diamond. I use it for obstacle course racing. But anyway, they were pretty good. They're very bright. They show the imperfections really well. The good thing about this one is that it's just a little bit larger, so you get more of a brighter surface area, makes your job go a little bit faster. But put this on your head, start sanding, man, it's pretty good. All right, so now I'm moving on to kind of my filling phase. Okay, now I got two kinds of fillers. I've got a filler for things like little cracks and voids that have to be filled. where two surfaces are meeting. And for that, I just use basically this 3M spackle. Stuff works great. We've used it for years at this point, never had any issues with it. The other filler that I'll use is like a body filler, like Bondo works fine. But you want to use a glazing putty, something that's very smooth. And that's what I use for filling voids, right? Things that are cavities in a piece of wood, like a dent, things like that. I'll fill with that stuff because it's just a little bit harder. Whereas when you try and fill voids with a spackle product, when you wipe it down, it tends to leave a little bit of a low spot. And even if you try and sand it, like leave it proud and then sand it, it always seems to leave a little bit of a valley. So I try and use the glazing fillers and things like that for voids, okay? So again, I'm going in just wherever I have any kind of a gap between my trim and my end panel here. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna fill this stuff in with my spackle and then wipe it down with my wet damp rag, and I'm left with a nice filled void. So I can just pack this junk in here. We take our rag, we're just gonna wipe it all down. And when you wipe it down with the water, it leaves you with a nice smooth surface area there, which is really important when you're spraying your nitrocellulose lacquer. I'll grab my razor blade. I'm just going to clean out the corner. We're just going to do that all over our cabinet, anywhere we have gaps, and this thing will look beautiful. When we paint it, you won't have any dark spots, which you're usually seeing lesser grade pieces of furniture, lesser quality prepped pieces. You'll see gaps and imperfections, but because of the way we do this, you're not going to see any of that. All this stuff is sanded. It's ready to go into our booth. And I hope you like this video. I hope it gives you some ideas about sanding, different tools to use, different kinds of products to try. We sand probably 1,000 pieces a year. We paint about 1,000 pieces a year. So we're very busy. We do this all day, every day. I got guys that are on sanders 8 hours a day. I got guys that paint 8 hours a day. And this is exactly the process that I use for going through new furniture as well as vintage furniture. Vintage furniture has a couple more steps with filling and rebuilding broken parts and stuff like that, but for the most part, these are the exact products I use. These are the exact methods that we use, and hopefully this will help you with your priming and give you something to think about to get a better, more lustrous, lacquered finish for your furniture. So I've got lots of other videos on my YouTube channel on how to make things, how to make faux bamboo furniture, how to make dressers, how to make credenzas, how to make all kinds of fun stuff, bathroom vanities. Go over there, check it out, let me know what you think. I also talk about the furniture industry. I'm gonna do more videos on painting, on sanding, and kind of the back end of running a furniture and paint shop. If you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me at theresplendentcrow.com or modernwoodrunner.com. You can reach me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. And like I said, feel free to touch base with me, and happy painting.